Hello and welcome to the Black Tower. I'm your host, your guide, your brother, Sorcerer Armanasul. Maybe I can get the distance thing on this right. I don't know. I'm going to try this. Alright, so I got a special one for you tonight. The Sumerians, an agricultural people. Mm. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. I was talking about the grain mysteries and how they tie into the Simon Necronomicon, how they tie into magic in general. That's about time I got to it. There's a lot of knowledge in this, so forgive me if I'm a little bit long-winded, if I jump from point to point to point to point. But the thing is it'll all tie in, every single bit of it. So for this one, we're going to have to jump to the Magan text, to the descent of Anana into the underworld. And we're going to fast forward just a bit. We're going to get past the whole talking to Ningazita Seti and taking her jewelry and clothes and all this other stuff off and leaving her in the underworld. There's this thing about literal and figurative. The story was just that, a story. It was a figurative story to tell the tale about agriculture. You might be going, no. Well, hold up. Don't get too aggravated at me. That's the literal thing behind the mythology of the underworld. That's the literal. Now, the figurative is where mythology comes into play, wherein calling upon these gods and goddesses and so forth and so on. So therefore, it becomes a figurative, or from the invisible realm. See, the ancient people, they weren't like us with shit ton of free time and just, oh, we can just think stuff up. No, instead, they were a very practical people. If it didn't apply to everyday life, it was not in their belief structure. It wasn't in their religious beliefs, their mythology. It just wasn't. If it wasn't practical, if it could not be applied, if it wasn't something that they could see in nature occurring, it wasn't part of their mythos. Therefore, they were a living part of their own mythology, and therefore the gods dwelt among the people. Now, like I said, this is long drawn out. Forgive me. I will do my best. In the Magan text, like I said, let's get past all the part about she's hung for mistake and dying. Now we come to the part where Enki, beloved of Ishtar, her man is pining for her. He's like, oh, she's gone to a bad place. She done died on me. What do I do? Well, what does he do? Enki is a badass. Dude decides, you know what? Fuck this. I'm bringing my bitch back from hell. And I'm not taking no for an answer. So, on this side of the earth, above the earth, he decides he's going to make two elemental spirits, Kurgaru and Kalaturu. Kurgaru is a spirit of earth, and Kalaturu is a spirit of the seas. Now, this is where you get the food of life and the water of life. Now, for those of you who have always wondered what the food of life and what the water of life is, let me make it simple for you. The food of life, grain, literal seeds, grain seeds, grain. Just grain, the food of life. And here's why. The grain itself represented a part of the cycle. There are 4 parts of cycle. There's conception, where the baby's put in the womb, or the seed is put in the earth. There is birth, where the child is born, or, oh my God, the seed sprout. There is life. That is where the child grows into a toddler, a mean miscreant teenager, ha ha ha, an equally aggravating adult into an equally, even maybe more so, second child stage of old person, which is life. And then the seed becomes a full plant and is harvested into the cycle of death. So the food of life was seed, is grain. Now, waters of life. Well, Enki is known as master of the waters. You show him with a little pitcher going around pouring water everywhere. Kind of funny how I thought it was like an Aquarius figure, the water bearer. It kind of makes sense. It really does. Also, trickster type spirit, which I won't get into that because that's not part of this whole thing. I won't even try to touch that. But Kalaturu, spirit of the seas, what is the waters of life? Rain. Simply put, it's rain. So food of life is seed or grain. The waters of life is rain or water. Because, see, it's not enough just to have the seed. Because the seed won't grow on its own. It takes water. You know what I'm saying? For example, a baby in gestation period while in the womb is surrounded by water. Same thing in the earth with seed. Now that I've taken all the mystery out of this and you're like, oh my God, I've been worshiping seeds and water. Never fear. Weiwei's got your back. Bitches, I'd never let you down. Alright, so that's the literal thing. The figurative aspect of this. Food of life, water of life, these two spirits, right? So what would they be in the figurative sense? Like in the, yay, we can have fun with this. We can actually, do magic with this and all this other stuff. Well, these two elementals represents earth. And earth is just perfect for creating things, for making things physical, for making them real. And water is like emotion, and water is tears and stuff like that. It's what gives it power. It's what gives it sustenance. So through emotional energy and through physical actions or working with earth-type spirits or energies, you can create something. So I'm not going to leave you out of there. Okay, that's how that works. But now, let's go a little bit further this. Okay. So anyway, so these two spirits go down, and they sprinkle the food of life, waters of life, 60 times each. What's so fantastic about this? Well, let's think of the Middle East for just a minute, okay? Because that's where Sumeria is, okay? This is where these people were. You got to think. When we think of winters, there might be snow on mountaintops out there. But down in the land where everybody is, during the winter, it's not like cold or anything. But the earth dries up. It's like land that's frozen. Outside of it not being frozen, it's just it hasn't got the nutrients and stuff built up in it, so it doesn't support life. Therefore, it's the winter, and it lasts around 60 days. That's interesting. That's maybe for some of you who didn't know that, and I'm not a know-it-all and nothing like that. I just I slap a little common sense, do a little bit of research, have some kind of idea about all kinds of different things, and you'd be able to do the same thing. I don't have special powers of clairvoyance and I knew because I was there or I looked back in time. No. I used everything that I was born with. My mind, my intellect, and my connection with the spirit realm. Because I rely on spirit to fill in the blanks. Or AKA all the stuff that gets all the thoughts going in your head to where your head puts it together, pieces it together. Now let's go past that, okay? Because now that I've explained Kagaru and Kalaturu, now that I've explained about the water of life and the food of life and the water of life, let us go on just a bit further and let's get more back into this. Now to these ancient people, okay, Inanna, Queen of Heaven. Why was she called the Queen of Heaven? Well, because she bestowed all kinds of goodness upon her people. Well, I told you, these people were very practical. So what would that mean? How would practicality, be employed here? Well, check it. Okay, so So in a really weird way, they saw the earth as being the body of the mother. Literally. Because from the earth came life, okay? Now, Queen of Heaven, because the light that shone closest and nearest to the sun was Venus, the morning star, okay? And its connection, therefore, with the sun, that it arose just before the sun did by about 45 minutes. Holy crap. Queen of Heaven, and her light glow would awaken the earth, knock off any dew, anything like that, to where the plants would start to grow, and as soon as the sun came up, the flowers started to bloom fully. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with the earth and planted flowers or worked in fields or anything like that, but I have. I've did quite a bit. I love anything to do with the earth, anything that grows, which is probably why I love the Sumerian people, because I understand the practicality and I understand the hard work that they employed in it and paying attention. And, like, for example, they knew where these people disappeared, and what happened is the fact that their land, after a while of doing this every year and keeping it up, what happened is that the salt levels started to increase in the soil. Their pH balance got thrown off, and it started choking out the wheat, out the plants, and so wheat wouldn't grow, and so they had to move and everything else. There's a great big thing about the cycles of the waters and everything else. Think of Egypt with the river Nile, and the silt and everything else, and how it was important to agriculture and towards cities growing. That's what happened to the Sumerian people, okay? Anybody can say anything they want to, oh, they just disappeared. No, 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 no. Oh, they disappeared, yes, but they had to move out of their comfort zone there between the two rivers because of salt killing out the plant life, and so it wouldn't grow, and so they had to move. Just like any other tribe or nomadic group. Now, the difference is these people actually held on to seeds and put up seeds and stuff like this called grain and stuff like that. And, they would plant over here for a little while, and the next year they'd plant over there for a little while. They were smart farmers like that. But anyway, getting back to this. So they saw the earth as, you know, as a goddess figure, as a prime female, And like I said, I was explaining about Venus and the sun and how that ties in. And so the Queen of Heaven, her light shone down, and the earth gave fruit and goodness. And so when they would plant seeds, to them it was symbolic of, if the seeds grew and everything, it was the mother giving her blessings. Now, where did Ereshkigal come into all this? Where did the descent and all this other stuff? Because you remember those 60 days I was telling you about where you couldn't plant anything, it's wintertime, and so, nothing would grow and all this other stuff? Yeah. The whole thing with, she was stripped down and hung for mistake and all this other stuff. That was some pretty good storytelling, I ain't gonna lie about that. I mean, that was pretty cool, man. I like that. I did that. I could see that. I did the ritual. I emotionally, broke myself down, visualized myself hanging naked upside down being torn to shreds. It was, oof. Boy, Passing of the Abyss was so much fun. I love Ganzir. Gonzir, excuse me. Forgive me. But anyway, so what happens is during the late half of the year, when the final harvest comes, what's left of the root, of the stalk, everything, just dries up and dies in the earth. Holy cow, that's what happened to Inanna and the descent of Inanna. Oh. But she came back, how? Why, what? Yeah, she did. She was raised up out of there. Because, see, Enki, or the rain, or the waters, because, see, like, Inanna is the growing plants of the earth. Enki was the waters that watered the earth. Which is kind of interesting when you think that there were two elemental spirits, Kurgaru and Kalaturu, spirit of the earth and spirit of the seas, So earth and water there, and then you got these two earth and water types. And so So here it's repeated again, and then you can see how it's still there. Like I said, these were very practical people, but at the same time, they had a very rich belief mythological system, and it was agricultural in design because, like, they were farmers, man. They farmed. Uh, but anyway, uh, sorry, I'm not trying to get thrown around or twisted or twist you or confuse you. But anyway, so in the underworld, a Rishkagal, she takes all that dies and she gives nothing back. She takes the essence, meaning she pulls all the sustenance so that the roots die, so that the plant dies, so that it cannot grow. Can you see where they would come up with this? Now, then comes springtime, planting seeds and watering it, sprinkling the food of life, sprinkling the water of life. You see, that's how this worked. This is how this came. This is how the mythology actually literally came to be. Okay. Now, it was important to these people to create a mythology around this. And I'm going to try my best to explain why. Okay? Because, yes, they could just been like, no brainers, been like, I'm digging a hole. I'm going to put this in there and put some water on it, and that'd been the end of the story, you know. But these people, like I said, they had a belief system. They believed in the gods and goddesses and all this other stuff, these forces, these powers. Now, whether or not the Sumerians literally called upon Enki, or whether Enki was just a little bit after the Sumerians, whatever, I don't want to get into that uh, because from what I've been able to research and study, Enki was most definitely in the belief system of the pre-Babylonian people. So I can, with certain amount of certainty, say that Enki wasn't their thing, but without getting confused or twisting anything up. So these people had a rich belief system, a rich mythos, that the Queen of Heaven and that the Lord of the Waters, the earth and water, that the god and the goddess of these two things, along with their ministering spirits, created life and abundance. And through this, they cared for their people. Now, in today's term, everybody be like, I planted the seeds, I watered it, I put pesticide on it, I kept it. Wasn't no god or goddess over that. That's how time has changed people. But the ancient Sumerians, they weren't like that for whatever reason. Whether because, they weren't egotistical, whether they, and not necessarily that that they weren't egotistical, because I don't mean it like that, but they didn't have that kind of attitude, you know. Do you know what it's like to have to literally plant food and hope and pray with everything inside you that it grows? Because if it doesn't grow and you can't collect it, uh, that you, your family, and your tribe are going to die because you have to have food to live, and therefore the powers or the forces that allowed these, the earth to give life to these plants and for the waters to come, and so that life continued like this, to them this was a very sacred thing. To them, these gods were real, these powers were real. Okay? Now, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm having to go over a list here. Inanna, Queen of Heaven, represents the earth during spring, summer, fall, where she provides for her people, represented by the seed, the plant, then the grain. This is overseen by the Big Dipper of the scythe, the beloved of Enki. He provides the water by way of rain. During the winter months, she, being the grain, dies and enters the underworld, where Rishkagal, representing the barren earth, the phase where all things die and go into the earth. Sorry, didn't mean to move the device. For a time, she is mourned, meaning that, they hope that they have enough to make it through the winter months during the time that the Earth's not producing. They're having to, like, monitor how much they use. Did they have a good harvest? Do they need to tighten their belts and not eat so much? I mean, these people are like I said, they're very practical. She is mourned, and by way of the passing of winter back into spring, planting and watering renews the cycle. Did you catch that? Renews the cycle. This is how Inanna not only became Queen of Heaven, but this is how she represented one of the very first times in ancient mythos of the resurrecting God. Now, by God, I do not mean this as masculine or feminine, okay? By God, I am just saying a God, okay? So don't nitpick me on the God, goddess, and you said it was a male and it's supposed to be a female. It's not like that. Just let's keep it simple, okay? So for sake of argument, so the very first resurrecting God was actually the goddess, the Queen of Heaven, Inanna. Check that. That's pretty cool. But anyway, renews the cycle. And she comes from the underworld and ascends again. The cycle is symbolic in the sense it represents conception, birth, life, and death. Now, in the Necronomicon, in the Magan text, it talks about that the demons and ghosts went before and after her. There is a really, 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 really fucking old belief system that plants have what they call familiar spirits. Now, here's what that means. That all living things have a spirit. Plants were no different whatsoever. And so, in this sense, it was a living spirit. Say, for example, that they hadn't gave offering to the land spirit, like they do in today's fairy circles and certain witchcraft things. Like my wife, for example, she gives offering of milk and honey to our house spirit, which I keep swearing up and down. I don't know why, and it's not because I'm making fun of her or the belief system or anything like that, but I keep thinking it's our house fairy, kind of like a Harry Potter thing, because every time I hear her saying, oh goodness, the house spirit, all I hear in my head, woohoo, we got a house elf, bitches. Hey, don't you wish you had a house elf? Put out your milk and honey, light you some incense and a small candle, and invite your house elf to come join in the fun. Get it something to drink. But the reason why milk and honey isn't because of the thing from the early 1900s where they were talking about, the land of milk and honey. It wasn't like that. But there is an old thing about that, okay? Milk coming from, like, goats, cattle, stuff like that. People would drink it. It was given to babies, stuff like this. It was given to the young livestock. Okay, that was first off. Second off, honey. Honey was used for medicinal purposes and for flavoring. I mean, make things sweet. It's where they talk about sweet water, like what you would give to Marduk or something like that. Marduk, excuse me, forgive me. Maybe that's just in my head. I'm just a little touchy about the way I say his name. Sweet water. It's just water with honey, and it's mixed. Now, a very interesting concept there is that there is an ancient honey mead. It's an alcoholic beverage. Now, it wasn't made of grain. It was made of honey. Ain't that cool? And so, in the sense, when you make sweet water, sweet milk like that, milk and honey, water and honey, whatever like that, you're giving both the life-giving nutrients, and you're also giving blood of the earth. To see, kind of works like this right here. The blood of the earth, or anything like that. I probably shouldn't have said that. I really don't know how to explain that too well. But honey has its own symbolic thing that it represents, and milk does too. And it's been very sacred since mankind started farming and living together and taking care of the family and stuff like this. But anyway, so now that's the part concerning the Sumerians as their agricultural belief system. Now, let us go into the Big Dipper just a little bit, because I want to kind of cover this too without overwhelming you, confusing you, or, I just want it to make sense. Okay, so the Big Dipper is kind of like a timepiece in the sky. Okay, because these ancient farmers, the agricultural people, they paid attention to the stars, kind of like today we have farmers' almanacs, stuff like that, so forth and so on. These people did too, and, and the one symbol that they used was around the North Star, because the North Star was the North Star. The Big Dipper, Great Bear, the scythe, moved around it. And they could tell time most perfectly, planting seasons, by way of the Big Dipper. Can you believe that shit? I can't, but they could. If I went outside, I could spot the Big Dipper, spot the Little Dipper, so forth and so on, and give me enough time, and I can, kind of keep up with where it's going to be in the sky, like from the east to the west, or west to east, as it passes in the sky and as the earth rotates and all this other stuff throughout the year. But these people, they weren't like in this day and age where we go outside and we can only hope and pray that the city lights ain't blinding us so we can actually see the night sky. These people don't have that problem. They may have had campfires, they might, stuff like that. But it was just them and the heavens, the light from the heavens. And sometimes I think that the thing that we as the human race in this day and age, one thing we're missing out on is the fact that for all our technological advances and everything else and everything that's going on, and I don't begrudge the evolution of humanity, of, technology or anything like that. I do think you need to, step away from your electronic devices some, but, whatever, to each their own. You want to stay like this all day long? Go for it. But by the time you're 35, your eyes ain't going to work right and you're going to have constant migraines. And if what they're saying is true about cell phones causing cancer because of the waves and stuff, which I don't know about that, or I don't know whether they're being stuck on that or not, you'd find out about that. But that's neither here nor there, because I'm not here to talk about that. But one of the things that we as an advanced civilization, we're missing out on the simple shit. Oh, you might say, oh, well, we don't need to know that anymore because we got this and we got that. It's true. But then at the same time, if not for the farmers of this world, we would all starve to death. Do you really think that fruits and vegetables just fall out of the sky? No, they don't. For all the people that are hateful and cruel about immigrants and all this other stuff, they really need to get the hell over it. Because those people are usually the ones that are going around, state to state, state to state with different crops. And they're making a few dollars. They're not making a killing. Just, gathering up the fruit and stuff. Because these farmers, it takes a lot to pay people to do anything for them that they can't do. And if not for some of these immigrants, and I'm not justifying them. It's not like that. But I'm just saying, before you totally bash something, at least know that sometimes there's a good side to it. Even, I'm not talking about the economic results because of stuff like that. I'm just talking about, though, that on small, simple things, like with farmers and stuff like that, if it weren't for the poor, uneducated people and everything else, and the people who just, followed the seasons and went to different farms, helping gather potatoes out of the ground. I've done that. Apples, stuff like that. I've done that, and I mean, I'm not rich and I'm not, dirt poor and then follow around, but I've done it because, um, since I was a kid, I lived on farms. I've worked on farms. I mean, I've gone out and done stuff for a few dollars. Well, it seems kind of crazy some of the stuff I did when I was younger, but all in the sake of a few dollars. And because I'd rather do that because I wanted to be out underneath the sun working with the earth than inside some building flipping burgers for a lot more money. because I felt fulfilled. But the thing is that in this day and age, one of the things that we're missing out on is being able to see the night sky. You know, yeah, I live in a small town, and I've lived in the country a lot. Now, I mean, and I like cities. Don't get me wrong. I'm not some, oh, I want to be out in the middle of nowhere. No, I'm sorry, I don't. But at the same time, at nighttime, and I step outside my door, I do miss not being able to see all the stars. I do. I like living out in the middle of nowhere and coming to town, all this other stuff. But at the same time, I also like being around other people. I like the hum and thrive, knowing that I'm around people that are alive and moving and doing something, you know. Whereas out in the country, you don't really get that. But I'm really going way off mark of my original thing about the Sumerians. Now, I bring up the thing about the Big Dipper scythe to represent two things. Now, when you hear Sumerian, you also hear Akkadian. Now, you know what's really weird? Is that these people were freaking neighbors, and the Akkadians did not kill the Sumerians. Because if you know anything about history, the Akkadians were the most blood-thirsty race of people ever. I loved history coming up, and when I found out that the Akkadians were freaking awful, I mean, they were war type from hell. Did you know that the very, 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 very old swords and weapons, when you go out and you see a sword now, you think of a ninja sword, or you think of a two-handed bastard from the Middle Ages and all this other stuff, or a sword, uh, I don't remember, sword and a half sword, I don't know, something like that. I probably butchered that whole shit back. Forgive me if you're a sword fan and you know better than I do. It's just been years and I don't remember what it's called. Any rate, the type of blade. But did you know that back then, and I think this is interesting because it ties into the Big Dipper as the scythe, as a symbol of the scythe of harvest, is that there were two types of people. There were the farmers and there were the warriors. And that's why I brought up the Sumerians and the Akkadians. The Sumerians, through a scythe or a sickle, would harvest the wheat and the grain. The Akkadians, through use of the scythe or the sickle, would kill you. Now, that's interesting. Some of you may have seen a movie like The Mummy and stuff like that and seen those curved blades called Urks. I believe that's how they're pronounced. And you might think that that's all Hollywood fancy and all this other stuff. But that's the way their blades were even before Egypt. Maybe not high quality up until, the different metals started being learned how to make stronger, better metals because, the Bronze Age and so forth and so on. And just straight up iron and all this to the age of steel that we have now. But this is the important thing. If you want to make connections to things, you think of the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. They're exactly alike. One's bigger, one's smaller. One's closer, one's further the fuck away. That's why they call it the Little Dipper. It's because it's little, right? Yeah. Well, that Little Dipper, it's little because to us, it is so much further away. Now, I've always thought of light and darkness. The brightest light casts the darkest shadows, right? And since everything is physical and spiritual at the same time, figurative and literal, like I was saying earlier about their gods were figurative and literal because they were a very, practical people. I've often thought that the Big Dipper would be representative as like, uh, either light or shadow. It doesn't matter because I'm not really comparing as which one's which or anything. But I like to think of them as being exactly the same. Uh, one's closer, one's further. And so one would be the true image, and the other one would be the reflection. Or if you want to think about it, it's like looking at the same thing, looking like it's a row of them. Kind of like they're connected, kind of like a tube, it looks like a circle on both ends if it's drawn with lines going across it, showing the design of a paper towel roll or something. That if you were to look at the Big Dipper and how the Little Dipper looks like it's off just a bit, you just imagine lines lining up each one of the things. Do you see what I'm talking about? I hope you do. I hope that didn't come out crazy. But the reason I bring that up is because of the same example I was using about the swords, and the scythe used as an agricultural tool and as a weapon. Well, you knew it was bound to happen. If that's nothing else, they pick up a stick and knock you upside the head. I would too. Somebody would mess with me and my family and my tribe's peoples. I'd have to get some. It's just what I would do. But the Akkadians actually traded with the Sumerians, which is interesting because I can just imagine this, that, the Sumerians learned what all they could do with grain. Alcohol was made out of grain, and bread was made out of grain. And then you got the Akkadians. I'm not saying the Sumerians weren't hunters and then go out and, catch a gazelle or a deer or whatever, you know. But the Akkadians they were the warrior types. They were the ones that would go out, do the hunt, do the killing, and all this other stuff. And they did trading together. You know, it's like he says, oh, well, you're really good at one thing, and I'm really good at something else. Why don't we trade? You know, and that's where our system today of bartering came from. Is stuff like that. And in history and in mythology and anything that you're doing, if you will always try to connect the dots, connect the lines, see how they connect, you'd be amazed how much information you can pull from your subconscious, from deep within. It'll come to you. Now, it's been a pretty lengthy video. I do apologize. I hope it wasn't too long, drawn out, boring, or anything. But I've been wanting to do this forever. The thing about it is, and I'm gonna leave it on this. I'm gonna tie this in all together. Why would these people worship these gods and goddesses over the grain and the waters and stuff like that? How were they not just whatever? What kept them, what kept them doing what they were doing? Because they saw themselves no different than the plant that they were planting, growing, harvesting, eating, because the cycle works like this. Grass grows, animals eat the grass, humans eat the animal, humans die, animals die, plants die, goes back into the earth to feed the plants, that feeds the cattle, that feeds the humans. They all die, wash, rinse, repeat. This is a cycle. And the Big Dipper keeping time the whole time. And these people saw the natural cycle at work, and the universe seemed to be telling them when it was time. And so they thought deep inside themselves that this was the knowledge of the gods. This knowledge was gave to them to take care of themselves. And for this, they revered nature and the stars and the cycles. And I'm going to leave it at that. I wish each and every one of you peace, blessings, and power. Till next time.